The way you begin your day shapes everything that follows, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet, in the stillness, in the way you rise, in the thoughts you allow, in the first breath you take with awareness. Stoic philosophy teaches that control begins not with the world, but with the self. And there is no better moment to begin mastering that control than the moment you wake. If your mornings feel rushed, if your mind races before your feet touch the ground, you are not just tired, you are unaligned, out of sync with yourself, and the rest of the day will follow suit. The Stoics knew the power of a well-ordered beginning. Marcus Aurelius would rise early, not to chase after success, but to return to himself, to remind his mind who is in charge. To stand before the day and say, I am not a slave to events, I am not a puppet of emotion, I am the master of this vessel, and I will steer it with intention. This is what a morning can be. Not a flurry of obligation, but a ritual of self-possession. Before the world places its demands on you, you decide who you are. Not with noise, but with silence. Not with haste, but with deliberation. It does not take hours. It does not take rituals wrapped in complexity. It takes only one thing: presence. The willingness to pause, to listen inward, to set the tone. And in that quiet act, you begin to reclaim the only power that matters, the power over your own mind. When you begin with clarity, you do not react to the day you lead it. When you begin with intention, you do not drift, you direct. When you begin with calm, you do not carry chaos, you carry command. This is not philosophy reserved for the monks or the elite. This is daily life. This is breakfast with purpose, a shower with awareness, a breath with meaning. The Stoic does not hope for a good day. He builds it, thought by thought, step by step. So ask yourself not what do I have to do today, but what kind of person must I be to meet this day well? Not what is on my calendar, but what is the quality of mind I will bring to each task, because the external is rarely within your grasp, but your inner world that is yours to train, to sharpen, to elevate. Your first hour is sacred, not because it is easy, but because it is yours. You owe it to no one. And in that space you rediscover the part of you that is not touched by fear, by comparison, by the burdens of the world. It is here that discipline is planted, not with force, but with quiet choosing, to rise, to reflect, to breathe with intention, to move with awareness. This is the foundation of resilience, of self-respect, of mastery. You cannot build a Stoic life in the chaos of reaction. You must begin it in the calm of intention. Let the first words in your mind not be worry but wisdom. Let the first movements of your day not be rushed but rooted. Let the first sensations of your body not be stress but presence. Because how you meet the morning is how you meet life. And every day is a training ground for the self, for the soul, for the kind of person you are becoming. So take the first moment not to scroll, not to speak, but to listen to what your inner voice is whispering. And remind it, as Epictetus would, that nothing external has power unless you give it. This is Stoic philosophy, not in books but in breath, not in theory but in time. And your time begins now. When you master your mornings, you begin to master your mind. And when the mind is governed with calm, the world no longer decides your peace. You do. Stoic philosophy reminds us that freedom is not found in circumstances but in clarity. And clarity begins in the earliest moments of each day. Imagine waking not to alarm but to awareness, not to noise but to direction. You do not rise because the clock tells you. You rise because your purpose calls you. You rise not as a reaction but as a decision. Each morning is a mirror. It shows you how you live. If you wake with dread, perhaps you live without meaning. If you wake with anxiety, perhaps you walk without center. But if you wake with poise, you walk the world with poise. Let your first act each day be a declaration not of schedule but of identity. I am not here to be tossed by the tides of the world. I am here to steer with conviction, with calm, with control. The Stoics did not seek to escape life. They sought to enter it prepared. And what better time to prepare than in the beginning? Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." and the most common waste is the first hour. That hour is gold. It is not for rushing, it is for building. Building the self, the mind, the intention from which all action flows. You do not need to control the whole day. You only need to control your start. And from that point, momentum will follow. Clarity will multiply. Discipline will anchor you. You begin not with goals, but with grounding. Not with tasks, but with truth. What matters? What do I value? How do I wish to live? These are the silent questions of a Stoic morning. Before your feet touch the ground, you have already made a choice to lead or to follow, to act or to react, to rise or to drift, and that choice echoes through every hour that follows. The Stoic knows there is no such thing as an unimportant beginning. Every beginning contains the seed of the end. So if you seek a calm life, begin with a calm morning. If you seek a strong life, begin with a strong commitment. If you seek a meaningful life, begin with a moment of meaning. You are not too busy to claim your mind. You are not too tired to shape your energy. You are not too late to begin again today in this very breath. Because the past is gone. The future is unformed. Only this hour is yours. And within it is the silent force that can change everything. Let your morning not be filled, but focused. Not loud, but deliberate. Not about doing, but about being. Who you are before the world sees you is who you truly are. That is where strength is born, not in results, but in resolve. Not in image, but in inner command. Let this be your ritual. Not for discipline's sake, but for liberation. Because when you begin with truth, you no longer need to seek it in the noise. When you begin with self, you no longer need to prove it to others. This is the morning of a Stoic mind, quiet, anchored, unmoved by the wind. The world will ask for your attention. Give it your clarity instead. The world will pull at your emotions. Meet it with stillness instead. The world will challenge your peace. Stand firm. You have already chosen peace before it even asked. This is not routine. This is freedom. And it begins every morning with you. Do not underestimate the quiet victory of beginning with purpose. It may seem small. A few moments of stillness, a silent affirmation, a breath with intention. But these are not minor things. They are the bricks of your foundation. In Stoic philosophy, what matters most is not what happens, but how you meet it. And how you meet it is shaped in the first minutes of waking. This is where discipline is not a burden, but a blessing. Not a punishment, but a path. Because when your actions come from intention, they no longer feel like chores. They feel like clarity, in motion. You do not journal because it is trendy. You do not meditate because it sounds wise. You do it because your mind left unattended will drift into fear, into doubt, into distraction. And so, you build a boundary, not with walls but with wisdom. You sit, you breathe, you write, you return. This is not a performance, this is a practice. A quiet choosing to shape your mind before the world shapes it for you. The Stoics train not once, but daily. Because life tests you not once, but constantly. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be and then do what you have to do. That is the formula. Each morning you declare not your schedule, but your standard. Not your tasks, but your temperament. Not your ambitions, but your anchor. And once that is clear, the rest falls into alignment. You may face conflict today. Begin with calm. You may face uncertainty. Begin with certainty of self. You may face pressure. Begin with poise. What matters is not the chaos, but the conductor. And you are the conductor if you choose to be. That choice is renewed every sunrise. You can let your phone choose for you. Or you can choose yourself. You can let your calendar dictate your worth. Or you can let your character lead your time. One leads to reaction, the other to quiet mastery. This is the practice of the morning. Not to escape the world, but to remember you are not a passenger in it. You are the captain. You are not the storm. You are the one who sails through it. And sailing begins with direction. So before you begin doing, decide on your being. Before you speak, remember your values. Before you move, Remember your why. Let your morning be a return, not a race. A remembering, not a reaction. Write what matters. Speak what is true. Sit with what is real. Even 5 minutes of stillness can change the course of your day, not because it is magic, but because it reminds you that your mind is not the world's to own. It is yours to lead. This is where inner power is forged, not in noise, but in the decision to begin strong, and that strength comes from simplicity. A glass of water, a deep breath, a page of reflection, a word of truth. Do not overlook these things. They are not small. They are sacred. The Stoic does not wait for calm to appear. He builds it ritually, deliberately, patiently. Every morning is a training, not of muscles but of mind, not of image but of identity. And the one who trains is the one who endures. And the one who endures is the one who leads. Lead yourself before you lead others. Order your morning before you organize your work. Command your thoughts before they command you. This is Stoic philosophy in its purest form. Lived quietly, practiced, daily reflected deeply. So ask again not what must I do, but who must I be in order to live well today? And let that answer guide your next breath. There is a quiet strength in those who rise before the world stirs. Not because they are superior, but because they have chosen to begin the day on their own terms. That is Stoic philosophy in motion. Not loud, not grand, but deeply intentional. The sun hasn't yet climbed the sky, but you have already climbed above your impulses. You have returned to stillness. You have reminded your mind that nothing outside can shake what is within. You are not here to chase noise. You are here to cultivate silence. You are not here to conquer others. You are here to master yourself, and that mastery begins the moment you say, "This morning is mine." In that decision, you reclaim your sovereignty, because a scattered morning leads to a scattered mind, and a scattered mind cannot hold direction. Direction does not come from goals alone. It comes from presence, from the discipline to pause, to breathe before you run, to reflect before you react, to feel your values before the world tests them. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere," and that is true of the mind that begins the day without focus. So simplify. Cut the noise. Choose a rhythm that honors depth over speed. Your day is not a race. It is a reflection of what you allow and what you resist. When you rise with calm, you teach your nervous system that the world is not in charge. You are. When you begin with vision, you teach your soul that chaos cannot blind you. You see clearly because you chose to look inward before the world rushed in. That is the practice. Not to be perfect, but to be present. Not to control the external, but to align the internal. This is why your morning matters. Because once you are centered, you move differently. You listen more deeply. You speak more truthfully. You choose more wisely. You do not become stoic by reading Stoic quotes. You become stoic by living deliberately, by making the smallest acts a training in presence. Even brushing your teeth can be a stoic act, if done with awareness. Even making coffee can be a return to self if done without distraction. That's the beauty of this path. It does not ask you to change your life overnight. It asks you to enter each moment with the clarity of who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is shaped not in moments of pressure, but in moments of preparation. The preparation happens when no one is watching, when the world is still asleep, when you have nothing to prove but everything to align. It is in this hour that your true strength grows, not in the body but in the breath, not in your pace but in your poise, not in ambition but in awareness. Every person has a morning, but not every person claims it. Those who do begin to shift their entire experience of life, because a calm morning becomes a calm interaction. A focused morning becomes focused action. A meaningful morning becomes a meaningful life. So write if you must. Walk if you can. Sit in silence if you're able. But whatever you do, do it with your whole attention. Not just your body, but your mind. Because It is attention that transforms routine into ritual. It is awareness that turns repetition into revelation. And it is in these ordinary practices done with extraordinary presence that Stoic philosophy becomes not something you study, but something you are. This is not about being productive. It is about being whole. Start your morning not to get ahead, but to come home. Come home to your values. Come home to your peace. Come home to your discipline. Because if you do not own your morning, someone else will, and that is a price too great to pay. There is nothing more powerful than a mind that begins the day with intention, because that mind does not stumble into distraction. It walks into clarity. It walks into responsibility. It walks into the world fully aware of itself. This is the essence of Stoic philosophy. To live each day not as a reaction but as a response, not as a drift but as a direction. You may not control what the day brings, but you control how you enter it. And the entry point is always your morning. The Stoics understood that energy follows thought, and thought follows focus. So when you focus your first thoughts on what truly matters, you are already ahead. Not ahead of others, but ahead of your lesser self. You have already won the first battle. The battle of self-neglect, the battle of avoidance, the battle of mental noise. Winning that battle sets a tone, and tone becomes trajectory. The most powerful people are not those who dominate others. They are those who govern themselves. And that self-governance starts small, with posture, with breath, with awareness of thought. It does not require perfection. It requires consistency. You don't need to conquer the entire morning. You need only to claim one moment, and then another, and then another. Eventually, those moments build. They become muscle. They become memory. They become who you are. The Stoics believed that the quality of life is determined by the quality of thought. And thought is most clear when it is chosen, not inherited. So do not inherit your morning. Create it, not in complexity, but in clarity. Start with a breath. Start with a question. Start with silence. Do not reach for your phone. Reach for your values. Do not chase approval. Return to principle. Because once you have chosen who you are not shaken by who the world thinks you should be. This is the strength you cultivate in solitude. This is the peace you carry into chaos. And this peace is not passive. It is powerful. Because in stillness, you make your truest decisions. In stillness, you see the things that busyness hides. You see your attachments. You see your fears. You see the subtle places where your character must grow. And seeing clearly is the first act of courage. The Stoic morning is not about speed. It is about alignment. Is my mind aligned with my mission? Or am I rushing into noise without direction? You answer that by how you wake. Are you owned by the world before you open your eyes? Or are you sovereign before your feet hit the floor? The power is yours, and it always has been. No alarm clock can take that. No email can override it. No opinion can define it. But you must claim it. Not once, but every morning. That is the practice. That is the path. That is Stoic philosophy alive in breath, in thought and action. And it begins right now with you. Discipline begins in the unseen, before anyone is watching, before the day announces itself, before the world asks anything of you. It begins in the quiet when it's just you, your breath, your values, your mind. That is where you shape the rest. Stoic philosophy doesn't begin in hardship. It begins in preparation. It begins in the calm long before the storm, and your morning is that preparation. Not just for success, but for struggle. Not just for achievement, but for adversity. Because life will test you in ways you do not expect, and if you are not rooted, you will bend in directions that do not serve your nature. The Stoics trained for difficulty in advance. They did not wait for chaos to find their composure. They built it in advance through small choices each day, each morning. This is why your habits matter, not because of results, but because of identity. Every act of discipline is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming, and every morning is an election. You cast your vote through what you choose to do or choose to avoid. Are you showing up for the person you say you want to be, or are you delaying it for the version who prefers comfort over clarity? That question is not answered once. It's answered each sunrise. Resilience is not built in the face of fire. It is built when you light the match yourself and stand still. Take the cold shower, write the truth, sit with the silence, finish what you started. These are not just tasks. They are testimonies. They are reminders to yourself that you are in control not of outcomes but of effort. And effort is the soul of Stoic practice. Effort in showing up, effort in simplifying, effort in returning to what matters. Winston Churchill faced war, but it was his inner peace that led others through darkness. That inner peace was not luck. It was forged in daily reflection and private rituals in the training ground of mourning. You have that same forge. And your mourning is the fire. Not for burning you down, but for burning away what no longer serves. Excuses, doubt, delay. You do not have to wake up perfect. You only have to wake up ready. Ready to begin, again, ready to return to yourself, ready to walk the path even if it's hard, especially when it's hard. That is where character is formed. In doing what is right even when it's quiet, even when no one is looking, even when you'd rather avoid. That is what the Stoic does. Not because he feels like it, but because he chooses it. And choice is the birthplace of freedom. So before the day rushes in, pause, and ask not, what must I do, but who must I be to walk into this day with honor? That question will shape everything that follows. And if asked with honesty and answered with discipline, you will not just win the morning, you will win yourself. Growth is not a coincidence, it is a commitment. And the strongest commitment is not made in public but in private. Not when others applaud, but when you sit alone and choose to learn instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to sharpen instead of coast. This is the Stoic way. To rise each day not for comfort but for cultivation. The mind is like a blade, and a blade that is not sharpened grows dull. Your mind must be trained, not occasionally, but daily. And morning is your quiet. Classroom. Abraham Lincoln was not born into greatness. He built it. Word by word, idea by idea, page by page in the early hours before duty called. His leadership came not from noise, but from reading, from reflection, from silence. You have the same tools: time, stillness, books, thought. You need no permission to become wiser, only willingness. The learner's mind is a Stoic mind, because it knows that ego is the enemy and humility is the path to strength. So begin each morning with a question. What can I learn today? Not what can I earn, not what can I achieve, but what. New idea can shape who I am becoming. Learning is not about adding, but about refining. It is not always more. It is often less bias, less assumption, less distraction. Each insight is a mirror. Each new thought is a test. Will you cling to comfort, or will you stretch into challenge? The Stoics did not seek knowledge to impress. They sought knowledge to improve, not to win arguments, but to win integrity. Not to look wise, but to live wisely. You do not need hours. You need focus. 10 minutes of real reading beats an hour of empty scrolling. One idea held deeply can redirect your entire day. So open a book, open a journal, open your mind. Let curiosity replace complacency. Let insight replace anxiety. And let the first light of day not blind you but reveal you. Because each morning is not just a beginning. It is an invitation to rise, to grow, to become. The learner does not fear change. The learner flows with it, adapts within it, and ultimately leads through it. Learning is not for school. It is for life. It is for the soul. It is for those who refuse to be frozen by what they already know. Ask yourself, what did I discover today? What idea surprised me? What truth challenged me? And let those questions become a compass. Because every great life is guided not by ego, but by inquiry. You do not need more motivation. You need more meaning. And meaning comes when the mind is active, when the heart is awake, and when the morning is treated as sacred. The Stoic knows that wisdom is not a destination. It is a discipline. It is a direction. It is a daily choice. So choose it now. Sharpen your edge. Stretch your thought. And let the weight of wisdom carry you into the day with quiet strength. Change does not ask for your permission. It arrives. Unannounced. Unapologetic. Sometimes gentle. Often forceful. But always certain. And the Stoic does not resist this truth. He prepares for it. He accepts it. He adapts. Because adaptation is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the art of staying rooted even while the winds shift. Your ability to adapt is your hidden strength. Not to abandon your values, but to bend your methods without breaking your soul. Life will not move in a straight line. Plans will fall apart. People will surprise you. And you will face moments where nothing feels certain. But Stoic philosophy teaches that certainty is not found in the outer world. It is found in the inner posture you choose to hold. You are not meant to control the storm. You are meant to navigate it. And that navigation begins each morning, not by expecting a perfect day, but by preparing a resilient mind, one that bends without losing its shape, one that shifts without losing its truth. Ask yourself before the world asks it for you. What might go wrong today, and how will I remain steady if it does? This is not pessimism. This is practice. This is preparation. This is freedom. When you train your mind to expect change, you stop fearing it. You start dancing with it. You stop clinging to what was, and you start working with what is. That is adaptability, and that is strength. The Stoics didn't pray for easier circumstances. They trained for greater composure. They didn't demand life obey them. They disciplined themselves to move with life without being owned by it. You can do the same. And you start in the stillness of morning. Visualize challenge, not to invite it, but to diffuse its power. When the mind is familiar with disruption, it no longer panics. It responds. You don't need control, you need clarity. Clarity of who you are, what you value, and how you choose to respond. With that clarity, you can walk through fire and still carry water. You can hold firm while adjusting your stance. You can suffer a loss without losing your soul. That is the quiet strength of adaptability. Let your morning be a training ground, a rehearsal for uncertainty, a preparation for movement. Reflect on the past, not to dwell, but to extract wisdom. What caught you off guard that you can now anticipate? What reaction did not serve you that you can now replace with intention? Write it down. Remember it. Carry it with you like armor. Because the Stoic warrior is not armored in steel. He is armored in awareness, in readiness, in practiced calm. He is not rigid. He is resilient. And resilience is born not in the battle, but in the breath before it. You are not fragile. You are flexible. And that flexibility is not surrender. It is strategy. So do not fear today's changes. Anticipate them. Welcome them. Meet them not with panic, but with presence. That presence is the power that turns storms into lessons, that turns broken plans into better paths. Adapt. Not to survive, but to evolve. Not to shrink, but to rise. This is Stoic philosophy as it breathes, as it bends, as it builds you into someone nothing can shake. Gratitude is not a soft emotion. It is a sharpened awareness, a deliberate perception, a choice to see what is present instead of what is missing. In Stoic philosophy, gratitude is not a luxury. It is a discipline, a lens through which we interpret life, not when things go well, but especially when they do not. The Stoic does not wait for comfort to be thankful. He cultivates thankfulness as a constant companion, even in discomfort, because gratitude does not depend on circumstances. It depends on clarity. Each morning is an invitation to begin not with complaint, but with appreciation. Before the demands of the day arrive, before the noise re-enters, before you look ahead, pause. Look within. Look around. Ask gently, what in my life today did I once long for? What small details do I usually overlook? What challenges have shaped who I am? And in those questions, you begin to reframe the day. No longer something to endure, but something to honor. Not a series of burdens, but a field of meaning. Gratitude does not deny difficulty. It transcends it. It does not ignore pain. It sits beside it with steady eyes and says, even here, there is something sacred. That is the power of a mind trained to see blessings where others see burden. Eleanor Roosevelt knew this. In War and Grief in Leadership, she began with gratitude, not because life was easy, but because gratitude gave her the strength to lead anyway. So too for you. Start with thankfulness, not to feel better, but to be better, because the one who is grateful is the one who is grounded. He does not chase, he does not grasp, he simply walks through the day with open eyes and an open heart. Write down 3 things each morning. Not dramatic, not perfect, just real. A peaceful breath, a lesson learned, a person who stood by you. Let your journal be a container of light. So when the shadows come, you have somewhere to return. This is not sentimentality, it is strategy. Because gratitude builds resilience. It softens the edge of your reaction. It centers your attention on what is strong, what is working, what is already enough. It trains the mind to stop complaining and start appreciating. And a grateful mind is a calm mind, a generous mind, a present mind. You cannot be angry and grateful in the same breath. You cannot be bitter and grateful in the same heartbeat. Gratitude dissolves ego. It reminds you that nothing is owed, that everything is a gift, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, because from them you grow, from them you learn, from them you remember that strength is not comfort, but perspective. So begin today not with a rush, but with reverence. Not with a list of demands, but with a list of thanks. Let that be your foundation. And from there, build a day that flows not from what you lack, but from all you already hold. This is the Stoic way. To see clearly, to value deeply, to live fully from the still ground of a grateful heart. Action is not enough, it must be aligned. Intentions are not enough, they must be embodied. The Stoic knows that purpose without motion is potential wasted, and motion without purpose is energy scattered. What brings them together is clarity, and clarity is forged in the quiet morning before the noise begins. Each day you are handed a canvas, and whether you create something worthy or fill it with chaos is determined not by what happens but by how you act. But action must be deliberate, must be rooted, must be born from who you are not, who others expect you to be. That's why your morning matters, because in the stillness you remember what matters most. You remember the reason you started. You remember the values you stand on. You remember that life is not about volume but about direction, and direction comes from vision. Walt Disney was not just a dreamer, he was a doer. But he did not act from impulse, he acted from purpose. He built his world before anyone believed in it. Because his mornings were not filled with doubt, they were filled with clarity. You too carry a vision, maybe hidden beneath layers of stress, maybe buried under routine, but it's there. It has always been there. The question is, do you return to it each morning? Do you fan the flame or do you let it flicker and fade? Purpose needs tending. Passion needs presence. Not once a year, but each day, each morning. Because when you forget your why, you will lose your how, and your actions will become empty. So ask yourself in the quiet, what is my fire? What am I building? Who am I becoming? And do not let the world answer those questions for you. You must answer them for yourself. This is not about excitement, it is about consistency. Passion is not a feeling, it is a force, a quiet current that drives you through doubt, through fatigue, through failure, and it is nurtured in solitude. Before the meetings, before the deadlines, before the opinions. You return to what makes your life yours. Not a copy, not a reaction, but a conscious creation. So write your purpose, feel it again, speak it aloud if you must, Remind your soul that it is not here to drift. It is here to build, to contribute, to love, to leave something more honest, more beautiful, more strong than what was there before. This is how you carry yourself through difficulty. With vision, not just grit. With heart, not just habit. And in this way, each day is no longer a repetition. It becomes a continuation of something meaningful, of something true. Do not let the morning slip by. It is the gate to everything sacred, everything vital. Wake with purpose. Walk with presence. Act with passion. And your life will not be ordinary. It will be yours. What defines your future is not a sudden event. It is the pattern of your ordinary days, and nothing is more ordinary than the beginning of morning, which is why it matters so much. The Stoic sees what others miss. That repetition is power. That routine is where the soul is shaped. Not in spectacle, but in silence. You do not rise to chase the world. You rise to remember who you are before the world forgets for you. That memory, that anchor must be renewed daily, before the wind pulls you into its own direction. The strength you carry through a difficult moment was built in the hour before dawn when no one was watching, and you chose to return instead of run. You chose to write instead of distract, to sit instead of scroll, to breathe instead of flee. This is what separates the anchored from the aimless. They train when no one claps. They act when no one cheers. They remember that a calm mind is not a gift. It is a reward for showing up, for beginning again. You do not have to get it perfect, you only have to get it honest. And honesty is what the morning invites, because the morning does not lie. It shows you your habits. It shows you your focus. It shows you your fears, your avoidance, your truth. And it gives you the sacred space to do something about it. You may never be able to control how others see you, but you can control how you meet yourself, and that meeting should happen every morning, not with judgment, but with intention. This is the heart of Stoic philosophy, to hold the self responsible, not in blame, but in dignity. To say I cannot control all outcomes, but I can control how I begin, how I carry myself, how I return when I slip. That returning is everything. Because you will fail. You will forget. You will have mornings when you fall short, and that's when the practice truly begins. Not in the days when motivation is high, but in the days when the weight is heavy and you still choose to rise even slowly, even quietly, even shakily. The world does not reward the most talented. It rewards the most consistent, the most anchored, the most present. And presence is a morning practice. So reclaim your rhythm, not just once, but daily. Let your mornings be a sanctuary, not a scramble, a center, not a storm. Because if you can win this hour, you can win the day. And if you can win the day, you can change the trajectory of everything that follows. This is how greatness is built. Not by accident, but by design. Not in loud declarations, but in quiet devotion. And that devotion starts now, with breath, with stillness, with truth. The quiet of morning is not empty, it is full of power, full of choice, full of possibility waiting for you to shape it. You do not need more time, you need more intention. The Stoic knows that fortune may favor the bold, but peace favors the prepared. And preparation is not just planning, it is positioning. Positioning your mind in clarity, your values in place, your spirit in alignment. You do not need to shout to have impact. You only need to act with unwavering calm, because the one who knows who he is does not need to prove it. He only needs to live it. And he begins that life each morning. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are only ever one decision away from realignment, from returning to your own center, from walking in the direction of who you were meant to be, not who the world pressures you to become, but who you already are, beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, beneath the performance. You already have everything required to walk this path. You do not need more books, you need more action, more presence, more returning. Because in truth, we do not rise once. We rise again and again and again. That is what discipline means. Not harshness, but honoring. Honoring your future by showing up for it now, even if it's quiet, even if it's messy, even if it's slow. Each act of presence is a sacred step. Each moment of awareness a sacred win, and the more you repeat it, the more your life begins to shape itself not by default, but by design. This is how you build something unshakable, not with noise, but with depth, not with intensity, but with consistency. The Stoic life is not lived in theory. It is lived in the hour before the world awakes, in the breath before reaction, in the choice before habit. So begin, even if you fell yesterday. Begin, even if the world feels loud. Begin, even if no one notices. Because this is not about performance, it is about presence, and the present moment belongs to the disciplined, to the awake, to the anchored. So be that person. Rise with resolve, act with integrity, think with clarity, and move through the day with a quiet fire burning beneath your stillness. You do not need to rush, you only need to return, again and again, to what matters. Let your mornings be your message. Let your calm be your strength. Let your life be your philosophy. This is Stoic philosophy, lived, embodied, breathed. One quiet morning at a time.